Alright, part two of the tools. We're going to try to cover the rest of the tool set in this tutorial. We left off with the Paths tool, or Pin tool is what it's called in Photoshop. But the Path tool will allow you to make selections based on curves and angles. The nice thing about the Path tool is that you can get a really clean edge if you use it as a means of making a selection. But you can also use it to draw with. And notice when you select it, you've got some options down here for it, and you've got design, edit, move, all of that. It's probably the trickiest tool to use, but it's one of my favorites because it does make the cleanest selection. To use the Path tool, you simply follow the area or make a line around the area that you either want to select or that you want to draw. And then it's a little tricky because you'll have a little area that you'll need to drag out. And what you want to do, the best way to practice using this tool is to trace something. And if you just kind of trace the contour of this football player. Now I'm going to trace his shoulder pad here. What you want to do is once you click an area, don't let go of the button. You want to go ahead and drag it with the button pressed slightly in the area that you're going, in the direction you're going. Notice how I clicked and dragged. I'll do it again here. And right now I've clicked the button. I've clicked my left mouse button and it's made a point, an anchor point there. Now if I drag my mouse in the direction that I'm going to go next, right here, it bends the line behind it. And notice how it bent the line to follow the contour of the shape that I'm trying to trace. So right here's where I left off. So now I'm going to draw again, another click, and I'm just going to keep following the contour of his pad and click and drag a little bit at a time. You want to do this, and it may take you some practice to get used to doing this, but it really is a clean way to make a selection or draw a shape, whatever the case may be. But you simply click and drag, and I'm not going to spend all this time doing this. You'll have plenty of chances to do this later on, but and that's how you use the Pin tool. The next tool is the color picker, and when you pick a color, it's just, notice what happens here is I select the light blue. Right here my color palette changes. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can click on the color and it'll bring up a picker here, and you can automatically pick that color, and notice how it changes it over here. In your foreground picker, you have two colors here. You have a foreground and a background, and you can change the colors with the color picker. And so if I want purple, now it's purple. If I want to pick the background color, I simply click the background color and find the color I want. Now I have purple as my foreground color, red as my background color. You can do that using colors within the image. And you can do it from the color palette. The next tool is the magnifying glass, or the zoom, and it's pretty self-explanatory. When you are making selections or following paths or drawing lines or whatever, it's a really good idea to zoom in nice and tight and use the zoom tool to its fullest. So and the shortcut for that is the plus and minus. If I just keep hitting the minus, I can zoom back out. But that's the magnifying glass. So if I wanted to copy this 7, I would probably want to get in nice and tight like that. And then if I wanted to use my pen tool or the scissor tool to start selecting it, I could do that. And that's how you would use the zoom tool to your advantage. The next tool is the measuring tool, and it's where you can measure distances. Let me zoom out real quick. Use the minus key there. Okay, so I'm going to use the measuring tool, and you can measure the difference between 2 points. So if I want to measure the difference between here and here, I can, and get an idea of what I notice right down here on the measuring tool. It tells me that I've drawn that line is 492.8 pixels. So I can measure areas that I'm wanting to create, and you'll see how that becomes useful later on. The move tool is a way of moving a selection or an area around. So if I click on the move tool, I can move things. The next part is the alignment tool. I can use that to align different parts of the image. The crop tool, it's a way of cutting the image. So if I use the crop tool and I want to crop the image down to that size, I simply draw it out over that size and hit enter, and now I have cropped it. Now keep in mind I've got my layers over here, so nothing is permanent. The rotate tool lets me make a selection, and then I can rotate it. And you can see how I've made a selection of that and it's rotated, and I can get precise rotations with the rotate dialog box. I'm going to cancel that. The next one is the scale tool. So I can use the scale tool and I can scale it down to size if I want, and I can again get pretty precise with how big I want it to get. So if I were to go ahead and set that, now I've got this thing here, this selected area that's much smaller. I'm going to go back up in history to this point. A skew tool right here, or shear tool I should say. In Photoshop it's called the skew tool. If I shear it, notice what I do with the selection once that's done. The next one is the perspective tool, and that really rotates, or warp in Photoshop as it's called, the perspective of your selection. The next one is a flip tool, and it just simply flips your image horizontal or vertical, flips it back. The next one is the cage transform, and you can deform a selection with a cage. And so now it's going to draw a cage there and transform it. And notice what it's doing here with the selection. The next tool, and let me get out of some of these things that I've done. And okay, so I've gone back to a previous state here. One thing I wanted to point out, and I didn't in the first one, you can add or subtract from a selection. So let's say I'm going to use my rectangular tool here, and I make this selection, and this is the selection I want. And let's say I don't need all of that extra space. Notice that in my selection tool right up here, I'm going to hover over the sky so you can get a better view of this. When I press the shift key down, it creates a little plus sign right there by my cursor. There, it's gone. Now it's back. If I hold the control key down, it creates a minus sign. So let's say I wanted to add this Russell logo to my already existing selection, and this can really save you some time. I simply hold down the shift key, I have the plus sign, now I can add that area to my selection, and if you notice the little dancing ants, the line going around it, that's now part of my selection. Likewise, I can also subtract from it, and to do that I simply press the control button. I've got the minus sign by my cursor, and let's say I want to take out the NEO. I don't want that to be included in my selection, so there, and now it's gone. It's not included in that. So my selection now consists of the Russell and this box here, and then there's a kind of missing piece here that was the Iniolo. So that's how you can add to it. So if I wanted to add the player's face, I could simply select my ellipses tool, hold down the shift key, and draw, and now I've added to it. So now my selection is this area here as well as his face. Or if I wanted to add using my free select tool, I can click that, and I can simply hold down the shift key, and let's say I wanted this guy over here to be a part of it. So now he is a part of, and that's what my selection looks like. To test this and to show you what I'm talking about, I can use a paintbrush on it, and I can, now I'm only painting in that area. And notice that it's not painting over the Iniolo logo because I took that out. But anything that I've selected is the only area that I'm going to be able to work in. So my paintbrush doesn't go outside of that area, that selection. Another great reason why you would make a selection. Okay, so I'm going to go back now and come back to this date, and we're back to where we were. Alright, to resume this, I've got the text tool, which is next. We'll be using this a lot in this course. If you click on the text tool, it's going to allow you to create text for your image. It uses by default the foreground color. The text options tool down here will let you change the face of the font as well as the size of the font, as well as some other parts of the text that you might have. So let's say we wanted to name this guy. We could name him, let's see, let's use a light color here, and I'm just going to change the color. Let me show you something else. You've got your colors here in your foreground. If you want to use black and white, there's a black and white that stays right here all the time. If I click that, it's got them. Now if I want to switch black and white, or if I want to switch the foreground with the background color, I simply click this little arrow and it will toggle back and forth. I'm going to go with a white letter or white font color, and I'm going to click out here. It's going to be a sans font, and I can change that if I want to something else. Let's make it Georgia, and I want it to be we'll leave it at full on hinting, and then Georgia, and I click out here, and I'm just going to type in the notice that it's, there it is. You can change the face of the font, you can change the size of the font, you can change what it is you're measuring, whether it's pixels, millimeters, inches, points. Right now I'm using pixels, so that text right there is 230 pixels. And a pixel is a dot within the image. And then I can use my move tool to move that anywhere I like. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Told you this was a common mistake, and if you come over here to you need to select the bubble layer, and now I can move the bubble tool. There it goes. So now I can put Bubba wherever I like. Alright. The next tool is the paint bucket, and it is a fill tool. And what that means is it's just going to dump in a color in any selected area. So if I have a rectangular selection here and I just want to dump a color in there, I pick that, and say I want to change this to red. I can now use the paint bucket in the selected area, and it will, you've got to be off of the text. I'm going to, create a new layer here. So now I have a blank layer here. Actually, I didn't want to do that. I'm sorry. I'm going to create a new layer, and I want it to be transparent, not white. And I do that right here. I select transparent, and I click OK. So now I have a transparent layer up here, and I simply can drop that color using the paint bucket tool in the selection. Put that in the back. I can put that in the back. I can put that underneath Bubba, able to be placed over that area. So that's how you use the paint fill. The next one is the gradient or a blend tool, as it's called in Gimp, and you can use that as a gradient. I've got gray or black and red. If I use the gradient tool, the blend, I can blend from black to red. So I go from red to black, red to black. And you will play more with gradients later. It's a pencil tool. If I just want to use the pencil tool, I can draw things, make sure that my selection's not made. So now I can draw. If I come back here to this layer, remember you want to be on an active layer where you want this to happen. So I want to use my pen tool on this layer, and I'm going to draw whatever. So now I have high written on the main layer, and this is why you want to duplicate your layers. I forgot to do that. Paintbrush is just like a pen tool. It allows you to draw. The difference is that you have different brushes, and you have different ways of applying pressure. Brushes and pens apply pressure differently. All of that's done down here in the mode. The eraser tool is just that. It's an eraser, and like a pen tool, you can have different brushes for erasers. And I close that window, and you can erase with the pen tool. The next tool is the ink tool and the airbrush tool. Those are very much alike. And then there's a healing tool, which allows you to heal parts of the image. I'm trying to rush through some of these at the end here because I know we're up against time. Clone tool. This allows you, this is another tricky little tool to master. You can use the clone tool to clone parts of this image to cover up damages or repairs or different parts of the I'm just going to go back to a different state where all of this stuff's not on there. So that's the ink tool, the clone tool. This allows you to selectively copy different parts of the image. The blur tool does just that. It will blur edges. The smudge tool will smudge edges, and then the dodge tool and burn tool will make edges darker. So if we use things darker here, or if we use the tool here, things would get darker. That's it for the tool section. Your assignments that will be coming up will allow you to explore and use these tools more in depth with more detail. So go ahead and proceed on to assignment number 2, quiz, and be sure that you have watched all of the videos leading up to this, and assignment 2 project and quiz will use what you've just covered. Thank you.